I forgot to start recording the meeting. Okay, so basically, like I was saying earlier, what are you doing with this is taking some answer that you get from ChatGPT and you're able to pass it to another API, then get that data, pass it back to ChatGPT to actually summarize or create something that's useful to you. So, for example, their main example that they're giving is the weather application. And in order to get the data for weather, ChatGPT doesn't have access to the internet unless or ChatGPT has it, but through the API, I mean, ChatGPT has it through plugins, but through the API, you would not have that accessibility. So you have to write your own functions to connect to the internet and pull that data, right? But it's a lot easier to use ChatGPT as the interpreter of the person's request. So it's very easy to get this, what's the weather like in Boston right now? Pass it to a model, and that model with a function call would return a piece of data that's kind of looking like this, where you have a JSON that gives you the location and the unit. We'll go more in detail in just a little bit. I'm just kind of trying to give the general description of what's happening, right? Then once you have this information, it's very easy to pass it to a function, and that function would go, so this would be a function that I custom wrote that would connect to the API for weather.com, and based on the data that I would pass in, it would return a nicer, more formatted kind of, this is the location, this is the units that the temperature is in. The temperature is 82.4 currently, and the forecast is for moderate rain, right? So this is current data. This is at the moment of that call. Now I can take this one and pass it to the model and to ChatGPT, to GPT again through the API, and it would return this very nice, the current temperature in Kona, Hawaii is 82.4 degrees Fahrenheit. The weather forecast indicates moderate rain, right? So basically, those functions allow you to programmatically and in a reliable way work with external API within your applications, right? So kind of let's start from the beginning. Here, if you want to get the weather from a specific data location and you put it directly into the API for GPT, doesn't matter if it's 3.5 or 4, it's going to say basically, I'm sorry, I'm an AI language model, I do not have real-time data, right? So again, like I was explaining later, you need to create this kind of like the back-end part that would allow you to go through it. Now, you can also create something similar where you just pass in a context what you want it to do, right? You can say your role is to convert the text given to a JSON format like the following example, location and unit, right? So you can do something like this. And then when you pass what's the weather in Irvine, it would return something that is pretty good. But if you work with APIs, they are quite specific on certain things. There's, for example, Irvine, it's a city that doesn't have too many other Irvines throughout the US. But let's say London, you can be London in Europe. There's another London in Ohio, and there are a couple other Londons in the US. So you don't know exactly which one it is. So you want the model to return the data a little bit more formatted. You can say, you can also say, also make sure that the location is formatted as city, abbreviation of state, and for units choose between Fahrenheit and Celsius. So this one is gonna make it a little bit better, right? And here it returned it back. But even though I asked for the abbreviation of state, I still got back California. as a full text. And if you pass it like this, Irvine, California, or the one that I had troubles with was Kona, Hawaii, it would find something in South America. I don't know exactly why, but the API will return weather data for South America rather than for Hawaii. So it's very important to have this data coming in as properly formatted as possible, right?
Anton,
Yes.
Did you say this is, excuse me, did you say this is open where I can ask a question while you're doing this? Otherwise,
Yes. Yep.
Just one thing that potentially would help clarify, when you're saying pass back and forth, just so you know, I've done a lot of programming. I've used GPT for quite some time, very extensively, for both JavaScript and SQL and other stuff. When you're saying pass back and forth, the part I'm not hearing yet, where is it passing back and forth? You ask the question in GPT first, ChatGPT. Then are you putting it somewhere else, or are you simply getting the response from the prompt and then putting it right back into ChatGPT? Where's it going?
So I am not working with ChatGPT here. I'm working directly with the OpenAI API, right? So
I have that. I have that account too. I have that account. So are you saying directly into the OpenAI boxes? That's where you're putting this?
So basically, all things happen programmatically through API calls. So you have that OpenAI released this OpenAI module for Python that when you import it and you pass the API key to it, now you're able to send requests. The requests library, you can just write your own request if you want to connect to the API ask for an answer, and
so that part I understand. I've done extensive programming like this. The question is, where are you putting it? In the OpenAI text box? Is that where you're putting this?
So this here, they have the chat models, the GPT 3.5 Turbo and the GPT-4 that are chat models that accept messages that have basically accept multiple messages. It's not only like a completion where you just pass one message, you get one answer back. Here you can pass a list of messages and you get an answer back. So in here, I'm creating this list where I pass this dictionary with the role of user. So I am the one that's asking the content, passing this content, what is the weather like in Boston right now? So I take this message, I connect through a chat completion to the OpenAI model, which the one that we're working on right now is this GPT 3.5 Turbo. And then I am passing this message, right? And I make the call, and the response comes back as this. This is just part of the call. It's not a full message. I can just print response. Actually, let's print it at the end. So when I pass this, right now, this is what the API response is. And I have the message that it sent back. And then I have a lot of other information about it, about this kind of chat completion that has happened between my program and their API. Does it make sense?
You just used the word my program. What is your program?
This right here is my program.
Okay, that's what you're referring to as your program. And are you doing all of this in OpenAI's website, their text box within OpenAI?
I think
Martin is running it in a Jupyter notebook, so it's just running.
Yes.
Explain notebooks for a second.
Thank you, David.
Okay. Yeah, so everything happens through the notebook. I am not touching anything on just basically the Chat GPT or OpenAI website. I'm just programmatically connected to their API. I pass a message.
There we
I
go.
receive back a message.
That helps. Thank you, David.
Okay.
So that's what it is. So okay, so
Right.
that's an online application of some kind. It's communicating directly with the API.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I needed to hear. Thank you very much,
Right.
David.
No worries. Yeah. So basically, that's exactly what's happening in each and every one of those calls. So here you can see that I have multiple messages. I have a system message, which is the original message that you would send to the API to just kind of set up some sort of a context for everything that you want, right? And then you would pass your question. And then whatever comes back, if you see in the answers here, it's as role assistant. So, and with the chats, usually you would take this message and you pass it back into this messages list. So you create your chat history. So every time you ask for something, you pass this whole list, which is the context, so the model understands what you're talking about, right? Otherwise, it doesn't have a memory. So basically, where were we? So here, you can start adding more and more information to these prompts, right? To try to corral it to respond in the way that you want it to respond. But I'm not sure how much you guys tried, but it's always a pain. Like here, California, even though I asked for abbreviation, you still get something that's a little off every time. And so that's where these functions came into play, because they actually train the models to respond in the specific call, right? Into that specific format, return a JSON. So if you look here, rather than sending just the message by itself, right now we've created this function. And function, it's like a big word that was a little bit kind of like weird when I started looking into it. But if you think of it, it's not an actual function. It's just a description of what you want. That's all there is. It's a description of what would you like the model to return to you.
You can put any word in there you want. You can call it a dog, a cat, or a car. It's just the word function is used.
Well, they are specific about calling it as a function, right? This is part of the documentation, and the parameter needs to be called function, right? You can name your list the way I have it here. I named it functions, but you can name it cat, dog, you're right. But when you make the call to their API, they want the specific functions, and also they want the specific call, right? So if you look in their documentation, and I kind of got this screenshot here, for a function, they care about three main things: the name of the function, which is required, a description of the function, but you want to have that description because it helps the model make a choice, right? You'll see later down where I have three different functions, and depending on that description, the model will choose which function to use, because you can pass more than one function. It's not limited to one, right? And then the parameters. And the parameters are basically what are you expecting back from the model. So here, if you look into this, we have the name, and let's get current weather. You can call it cat, dog, whatever. But again, it makes sense from your own programming sanity in a way to use a function name that kind of makes sense for your purpose, right? Then, like I was mentioning earlier, description is basically telling the model what to do, right? Get the weather in a given location. And then for parameters, I just have, they're using this JSON schema where they are asking you to put what do you want in certain format. So what do you want back? So what do you want back? It's an object, right? So currently I'm looking to get a dictionary that has in it the location and the unit, right, in Celsius or Fahrenheit. So right here for the location, what I'm waiting back, it's a string because it's going to be basically the name of a city and the county. And in the description, I specifically say that, hey, I want the city and the two-letter abbreviation of the state, and I'm just basically showing it how I would want that to be formatted back. Then for unit, again, I'm expecting a string because it can be a choice between Celsius and Fahrenheit, and I am passing the list here with the two values that I'm expecting to choose from. And that's it. Then this parameter that's required is optional. But at least when I am getting back from the model, I'm expecting it to return me something, right? So that's why I just made it required. You can leave it out or however. And then right now, when you make that call, again, you choose the model that you want, you pass the messages that were up at the top there, you pass the function, and you say which function to call. And for this function call parameter, you have three options. The default is auto, and it automatically chooses between the multiple functions that you might have in here based on the description of the function. Also, if you do not want to use a function at all, you can basically put none in there. The other option would be to specifically tell the API, use this function, and you can pass the function as a dictionary, basically, where you put function and you put the name of the function that you wanted to specifically use within that call, right? So it's as simple as that, basically. So now when you are passing this there, it's gonna just basically return back the location, Kona, Hawaii, and the unit, it's Fahrenheit, right? And it's very nice because right now you can put here in the question, you can be very lax about what you're putting in. The models are quite amazing when it comes to understand what you want, what you meant in that question, right? And that's the beauty of using these models to allow user input, right? And until now, taking that user input and converting it to something that's really useful programmatically was a little harder, but with this function, it's a lot easier now. So here I'm just saying in F, right? The model figured out that my thing was in Fahrenheit. That's what I wanted, and it returns the proper unit, right? So this is the first step where you're getting the unstructured data and you get a structured piece of information back. Now, remember in the beginning, I was saying that you take that structured information, you're able right now to connect with a third-party API, get the information that you want, and just kind of get your data formatted in a nicer manner, whatever comes back from the API. So if we run this function, that's basically loading it, and right now, oh God, what did I do? Yeah, I shouldn't have run this. No, I have to debug in real time. Response message function called name. Yeah, so probably I should run it from the beginning. Sorry, guys. Okay, so now you see when we run it this way, these were the arguments that we got from the previous call. We passed these arguments to this function, to the get current weather function. It connected to the API, and we got the information back, a lot more detailed, right? So basically, this is the temperature at this current moment in time. And then you can take this one and these two functions, these two cells do the same thing. I wanted to show the difference because in Python, you can call a function just by passing the name of it. So here you can do function arguments and pass to the function response, which is this available functions name, which is this one. So which is a little convoluted. But when you do like a dynamic program that you want to get back exactly which function was ran by the model and to use that one further down the road, you would want to do it in a dynamic way. It's a little bit more convoluted, so that's why I was like, I wanted to kind of show it exactly what's happening in the simpler way. So in here, these function arguments are just the response messages. So they're these ones. So these are the arguments, right? So now I am taking those arguments and I am just passing them to just call a function in Python, just like you would call it normally. So here, because I might have a unit or I might not, I'm just kind of using different ways. If I have a unit, I'm going to pass both location and the unit. And if I don't have a unit, I am passing just the location to my function, right? And if you see the function definition, I have the unit pretty much set up as Fahrenheit by default. So this way in here, you can get your response whether you have the unit or you don't have the unit. It's a very simple call. All you got to do is just pass whatever you got back from the model initially into your function, and you get the response back. So the response back is this one. And now with this response, we can actually, we append it to the messages. So remember how we were storing the list of messages here? So now this list of messages has this initial message in it. It also has this response message that it came back from the API. And now I am appending this answer back as well, right? So with
Anton,
all this,
I got a quick question.
yes.
On the actual, the method, the function for connecting to the third-party API, is there any requirements on what the output is, like the format of it, or like?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really, because what's happening, you actually take the, what's it called? You take its answer back, and here it's a JSON, but you will pass it in as a text to GPT, to the model.
But
so the
theoretically,
model
you could just return just a big string if you wanted to, or
yeah.
Okay.
You can get a big string and you pass that one in, and you're just basically adding to the list of messages, and the model now has all this history. This was my original question. This is what I told you earlier, and this is what the information that you gave me back. Now, with all that information, you're just telling it, hey, summarize this, and it's giving this very nice, clean answer back that you can use to just kind of return back to the user, right?
Cool, thanks.
So, yeah. So this is pretty much the whole gist of it. It's nothing fancy about it, and it's just nothing to be scared of. And amazingly, you can do a lot of things, and that's kind of like what our next examples are, right? And I was just kind of trying to come up with different ideas, and I looked online, and if you look at those links at the bottom, I have one video and a couple other places that that show some of the stuff. So here, I wanted to deal with unstructured text. So the one thing that I could think of was take a chunk of a resume and just plop it in, right? And if you look at it, you have the name of the person, you have their address, your phone number, email, LinkedIn, Then they have like a summary of accomplishments at the beginning, and then they have some work history, right? So now, if you want to programmatically extract from here, what's the name of the person? What's their address? What's their phone number? You're gonna be in a hell of regex in trying to find ways to parse this text and break it down and try to figure out what's a year, what's not, or any of that stuff, right? So it's pretty much impossible. It's not impossible, but it's just like a hell of an effort to try to parse this. And then the next resume comes in, and it's going to have a different formatting, different location of how everything is ordered. So it's just a nightmare to do it normally in Python, right? With this one, it's pretty much straightforward. So what I came up with was, let's see, I want to parse the professional experience. So professional experience is just this chunk here. So in the professional experience, what do we have? We have the company that the person worked for, where that company is located, what was their job title, when did they started, and when did it end. And then there is a kind of big chunk of text describing what they've done there, right? So if you look at this function, I just created it, and I'm saying the name, it's parse professional experience, description, parse text to extract specific professional experience. So I was very kind of precise in what I'm telling it that it needs to do. So parse text to extract specific professional experience information from a resume. So I'm giving it as much context as I can into that description. And then for parameters, I'm telling it what I'm expecting back. So I'm expecting this object, so a dictionary that has a company name that's type string, and I'm telling it the name of the company, return unknown if not present. So at least I'm kind of trying to control what's giving back to me. So I'm trying to be very specific to what I'm requiring. The same thing for the position held in the company, year start, when it started the position, year end, and in here, if you guys notice, the year end, where was it? It's present. So just because I wanted, in this example, I wanted to return an integer, I just said the year when, okay, I had a typo in here, but it still worked. So the position ended. And if still in the position, return 2023. So it will figure it out that it's present and it's going to return 2023. And then here for the description for the which one is this one? Oh, sorry, description. I just used the same name and I confused myself. I should have probably said something else in here. So this is the description of the work done under that position, right? Then these are the other two functions, but let's look at how the first one did. So I passed this and I let the model choose the function. I could have specifically called the function that I wanted, but I let it figure it out on its own. And it did. It figured out that the company name is the fashion company, position was designer, started 21, and ended, because it's present, it put 2023, and it put the description of what they've done in here, which is quite amazing. And imagine doing this in regular Python. I don't even want to try to think of how I would even do it, right? So the other two functions, I wanted to extract the contact information. So again, I looked for what was in here. We had the name, address, phone number, email, and LinkedIn. So I went through each and every one of these. So I said, I want the name, I want the address, I want the phone, the email, and the LinkedIn, and just describe what I wanted. And again, with this unknown if not present. And then again, I'm requiring them all just because I want it. And the last one is the summary. So I wanted to get the summary information. And that's all I did. I just want one chunk of text to come back as the summary with this description. Extract the summary from the resume, return unknown if not present. And the same exact thing. I ran this one for the personal information, came back with J Doe, 123 Fabric Suite, phone, email, LinkedIn.
Hey,
And the same-
Anton?
Yeah.
Anton? I used to program for database driven websites, and I would pull this information out of database cells. Is this coming? Are you requesting info from some database somewhere, or is this scraping PDFs? Where's it getting the information from?
So the information is passed right here.
But is it on some website somewhere where you're trying to get information out of a database?
No, it's a text string inside his program.
Say that again, please, David.
It's a piece of unstructured text that's literally sitting there inside his program. It's stored in a variable called toParse, and it is a Python text literal. It's just a big, long string. And it's that text that he has highlighted right now that it's pulling those things out of.
Right.
And where did that text come from? Like 1 million people putting data somewhere. Where's it coming from?
This is something that I made up.
Okay.
It's just, but it doesn't matter. You can pull from a database. This,
That's what I'm looking for, is the real world application of how this would be used.
the real world application. So if you think of it this way, resumes usually when they're coming in, they're either a PDF or a Word document, right? Or in the worst case would be a JPEG or some sort of an image file format, right? So, but taking that one out of the equation with the PDF and the Word, when you try to extract the text from either one of those, it will turn out to be just this long chunk of text that's unstructured. So by using this, you can have that unstructured text, and using these types of functions and using the OpenAI API, you can actually go through and extract structured data. So all of a sudden you can convert from unstructured to structured data very easily using these models, right? So
like you could pull it off of LinkedIn.
You can do whatever you want. It's just
that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you, Anton. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Is this like an ATS system?
Sorry?
Is that like an ATS system, I believe it's called, where you scan?
Right. So this could be used inside an ATS system. Exactly.
Okay.
So an ATS system can take this data and parse it in a nicer format way, right? So, but I mean, this is one example that I came up with, basically, right?
Yes.
And just kind of, it makes it, this is, the reason I came up with it is because it's so hard to extract structured data from data that's fully unstructured. Now imagine you have to deal with kind of like, Jeff is not here, but with title data, right? Title information for a property. You have these big contracts that have all this data spread everywhere, right? And each contract, depending on who wrote it or however it came in, comes in a completely different format. So just by using these models, you're able to really quickly extract that data that you want in a structured format and be really quickly able to see that, hey, within this document, this is the person that sells, this is the person that bought it in that contract, this was the date when the contract was signed, all that information. So you can really quickly extract data and have what's it called, a person that does a due diligence, an underwriter, go through that information, you know? So just basically a generic way of taking unstructured data and converting it into structured JSON files, right? So this other one, this is an example that I found online and I thought it was pretty cool, right? And I think everybody's been through this. trying to install the GPU, and just go and try to Google it, and you get all these big things, and you're spending so much time trying to figure it all out, right? Now, if you just go into ChatGPT through the API, you can pass this question: how do I install TensorFlow for my GPU? And what you want a list of bash commands for an Ubuntu machine. So you just want to get your list of commands that you can just copy paste and run and install everything that you want, right? So very simple. Just create this function, and you type the type, it's the object, and you want the commands back in an array. So this one you return an array, and you're just basically putting the description. It's the terminal command string, right? So you get this, and you get this list of commands, which is sudo apt update, sudo apt install, and everything, which you can very quickly run through a list and print them, and you get this. You can paste this one into a bash script or run it and just get your stuff installed, right? So it makes it a lot easier to do this. And I know Jay has a lot more experience with using it for programming, and we're working on to making a presentation for that, where you use GPT to actually generate code for you, which makes it a lot faster. So, and the last example that I have here is kind of like a fun one. You can have like a multiple personality responses, right? Like a multiple personality disorder. So you can say that when a user asks a question, you can actually get multiple answers. So one of them is sassy and sarcastic, the other one is happy and helpful, right? So you're describing this one as a sassy and sarcastic version of the response to a user query, and this one, it's a happy and helpful version, right? So whenever you run this, it's pretty funny. You're getting this sassy, sarcastic. Well, the question was, is it safe to drink water from a dehumidifier, right? So the sarcastic one is, oh, absolutely. Just make sure to add a splash of bleach for that extra kick, right? So it's definitely sarcastic. And the other one is the happy and helpful. It's like drinking water from the dehumidifier is generally not recommended, right? So these whole things can be used in so many different ways. It's just like amazing what you can do with this. And I'm just really curious to see what people are coming up with. It's still in its infancy. They've launched this about 3 weeks ago. So I've seen a lot of kind of tutorials and a lot of information about it, but I haven't seen real application as much. So yeah, so that's pretty much it about my presentation. You guys have any questions?
Hey, Anton, I've got a nitpicky little question.
Go for it.
Okay, so in each of those so-called functions, those templates that you've defined there, well, there's only one, so it's not each of them, but in the function that's defined there, sorry, not a Python function, but a OpenAI function. So there is that required field. Now, and that says which properties it must return. If that property does not exist in the source material, do you get an error, or does ChatGPT make its closest guess as to what kind of nonsense would be closest to what it is you want?
It's like here, basically. When it didn't find the unit, it returns an empty string.
Okay.
So that was part of it. But it's required in the sense of the JSON that OpenAI returns should have it in its format, right? So that way it's basically, you can either leave it out and you check on your own when you're getting the JSON back to see if it's there or not, or you just pass it as required and you know for sure that you will have that key in that dictionary, right?
Okay.
So you don't have to check to do your checking.
But you could put in there, none. Just say none.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is that OpenAI by default returns an empty string.
Right, right.
So yeah, you can do whatever you want after that.
Yeah,
So
that
can
way you
convert
know. Yeah, right there. Yeah, right where you covered it. You just put the word none in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when it comes back. So basically, these are the ones, and for the resources, they have a pretty good description and a good chunk of text of code here, kind of explaining you how to deal with it. It's a little bit, that's why I was saying it's a little bit convoluted because they're doing this weird Python function calling in a dynamic way. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, if you notice in here, when I am doing this parse unstructured text, I am defining these functions within OpenAI, but there is no function named the same way within Python. So you don't need the Python function. You can have a Python function named the same way that you're working with, like we've done it up here, right? For the weather, where I have this get current weather function that would actually do the API calls to the weather.com website and get that data. But these are independent from the OpenAI functions. So for OpenAI functions, you can create your own that are just for OpenAI, right? Like these ones for parsing text. So yeah, I just wanted to make that one kind of sure. So this is their function calling. They have the reference API where you can see there a little bit of the parameters and everything. And they have a guide. And also there's a link for the JSON schema reference if you want to look more in detail for how that JSON schema is. And they've used the JSON schema which is a standard. So it's not something that they've reinvented. And then where is it? This is the code, and there's also a video for this code that's part of that reference. So this is where I got the information on that, the commands on the Ubuntu machine and the sassy personalities. And then OpenAI, they have their own OpenAI cookbook that has quite a lot of great information here, but it's a lot more higher level than I was trying to keep it very low level and light for the presentation. But if you want more information, you can just go through here. So, and they have this example or where you can actually specify a function that generates and executes SQL queries. So you're passing a database, you connect to the database, and you get all these pieces of information like the table names, column names, get database info. You pass this one to OpenAI, and OpenAI, it's by using this type of function, you can just generate an SQL query, extracting info to answer the user's question, right? So you can put a, what do they say? Where is it? Hi, who are the top 5 artists by number of tracks, right? So it will take this information, this question, and convert it into this query based on all the information that it had in the from the table names and the column names and all that stuff, right? So it's able to run this, to generate this query, then you would run the query and get the data back, and these are basically, this is the answer back. You pass this one back to ChatGPT, to OpenAI, the model, and then where is it? Well, actually, it doesn't give a full nice description, but it returns a list of kind of pairs, right? But it's quite amazing what you can do with it. It's a lot. It opens up a ton of things, because having that structured data is what this model, I mean, generating that structured data from unstructured, it's this amazing use case for these models.
Is it creating the database?
No. This example here works with an existing database.
Okay, yeah, because that's what I used to program for hundreds of hours.
Right.
SQL. So that's, I thought you take it unstructured, put it into a database, and then be able to call from the database and put it into a format so people can easily see it.
Right. So basically, you can do the exact same thing in here, where you take a resume, then the unstructured data, you can generate this structured data and pass this one and put it in the database. So it makes it a lot easier to do all this.
I think your example, Anton, was possibly some business. You were referring to real estate. They get a whole bunch of contracts for who knows what those contracts are. Those contracts are either emailed, you put them into folders. The program goes through the folders, it extracts all the information, file after file after file, transfers into an actual MySQL database.
Right.
And then from there, they're able to pull it out of the database in whatever rows, columns you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and the SQL queries and everything can all be generated through the OpenAI API, through the models.
Interesting.
Can I ask you a quick question, Anton? This is a great presentation and demo. Actually, two-part question. So in one of the examples, you had percentage and ellipsis in between. Is that a part of the schema that we are required to do so, or is it I believe in the temperature? I mean, yeah, that one.
In here, the parsed.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
here.
source text. Yeah.
Yeah, these are just, so this thing was generated through ChatGPT.
Okay.
And I basically was saying, hey, just put ellipses and parentheses instead of numbers.
Okay.
That's all there is. This can be anything. So yeah, this chunk here, or the description here, and this were generated through ChatGPT.
Got it. Okay.
I just needed some text to play with.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay. The second, yeah, I'll look that up in the documentation as well. So in the second question is the thing about the drinking water from the dehumidifier, right? So the two types of behaviors that you were able to codify, the sassy and sarcastic and the happy and helpful, are these the ones changing? Then the property, what should I say, the left-hand side of the JSON notation, is that the one changing the behavior, or is it the description changing the behavior? I mean, changing the outcome of the question.
The description.
Description. So that's our prompt. Basically, you designed a prompt and put it in there. Is that the right?
Well, there is no more prompt at this point in time. So the API right now, it accepts this chunk of text basically, right? So it's able to parse it, and the models were trained specifically on this type of input, and they were asked to give this type of output, right?
Right.
Or whatever the output is. Yes, this one.
Yeah.
So right now, the new models that they've released 3 weeks ago, this 0613 models, they are used to accept this data and output this data. So if you see here, well, let me show you another little thing, right? So when you do a normal call, right, this is just a normal API call.
Right.
The data comes back into this field that's called content,
Mhm.
right? Now, when you do it through a function, the answer comes into this function called arguments,
Mhm.
and the content comes in as null.
Right.
So it's just a different field that you're getting back when you're using the function calls. You're not getting the content anymore. So that's why the models are trained to accept a certain type of input and another type of output when when the function parameters are passed. So here.
Got it. Yeah. So the description makes all the difference. So if you had one more type, maybe in a different language or whatever, the output would have been
Oh yeah,
modified.
well, we
Basically.
can just try it here. Let's see. We can just copy this and let's see, can we do this? I'm trying to, okay, French.
Mhm.
Translate it into French. What did I do? Line 14. Yes. See if it works.
And you need the required as well to be modified. That has only 2 parameters right now, the required field.
Yeah, it's fine. That should not be a problem. Yes, it is a problem. Oh, no, it's French.
So the required.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, because I was trying it earlier without, and it worked.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there it is. Yeah. Okay.
That's what it was.
Mhm.
Good catch. Yeah, no, it worked for me earlier. That's why I was like, huh.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Good to know.
So you
Yeah.
can do
Thank
whatever
you.
you want in there. Just multiple
Yeah.
different. So these are different transformations that you can just kind of put in a series, right?
Got it.
So, and I'm assuming that the way I had these 3 functions here, I could probably merge them into one big function, you know, with more parameters for what I need specifically here. So they're just kind of different ways. That's why I'm saying that right now, this is just the beginning. And I'm assuming that they're gonna come up with new ways and easier ways to work with. And also, I know that LangChain started implementing it as well. So this is straight through the OpenAI API, but through LangChain, you'll be able to do the same. I haven't looked much into that, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Any other questions?
Hey, Anton, when
Yeah.
you were showing us the screen with the OpenAI documentation, and there was that one that had the particularly tall black box of example code. Underneath it, there was a blue box saying something about hallucinated responses.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what they were saying. So they had for a while the system messages, which if you guys remember, I was doing here. One of the first ones had a system message when I was doing it without the function. So the system message is basically priming the model. Where are you? Up here, right? So it's priming the model. It's giving the model an idea of, hey, this is what I want you to do. And here I was like, your role is to convert the text given into a JSON format, like in the following example, location and unit, right? That's what I specifically asked it to do. So this is what we used to do a lot before. the functions. Right now, yes, they're saying that sometimes, even if there is no function, it might think that there is a function and hallucinate an answer to a whatever function that it came up with. So that's why they were saying that you can pass a system parameter, a system message, only use the functions we have been provided with, right? So that way it doesn't try to come up with different things. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Although now I'm dying to know what kinds of things it has dreamed up on its own.
Well, I was hitting some, when I was working on this code, I was just kind of like keep on running and I would turn off the function, put the none in, and the answer that I would get back, it still was formatted like the function. So I'm not sure if there is some sort of a caching because my calls were coming one after the other. So I'm not entirely sure, or there was something on my end, but that's kind of like, yeah, it's still finicky. It's still finicky. It's still not like code that you would write. And you know that 100% this is my input, 100% this is my output, you know? Because especially for these ones, the output, the input varies so much. But before, the output was a crapshoot pretty much. Now it's a lot more precise. It's a lot more sure that what you're getting is the right thing.
Can you zoom in so we can see the URL on that page?
This one here,
Yeah.
I don't think I can zoom in on this, but I can paste it in
Is there a way, paste it somewhere?
I paste it in the chat. But I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna put the notebook, I'm gonna put the link to the notebook on the chat for the meetup. So if you go to the event page, it's gonna be right there in the chat.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yes. So, and all these links are here at the end.